And I was, what, 88, I was 7 years old. I may have been drunk that week, who knows?
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. This is the Ward 1 Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting for Monday, May 8th. Can I get a roll call, please?
Chair Ginsburg.
Here.
Ralph Terry,
Here.
Piskovich, absent this time. Ross,
Here.
Shrimp. Here. Tyson.
Here.
Wager,
Here.
Werninghouse, absent this time. Council Liaison, Councilmember Breckus is present, and I am here, Tyler Shaw, Staff Liaison. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're gonna move on to item A2, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action items or any general public comment, and is limited to no more than 3 minutes for each commentator.
Mr. Chair, we have one commenter registered this time. Steve. Hadar, Steve Hadar. Steve, come on up, or whatever's easier for you. You'll have 3 minutes. Go
All
ahead.
right, well, I did preparing this is mostly casual. I called the city on inquiry of STR short-term rentals. And I was told that there's nothing on the books per se. And as we've seen in other communities, that can be an issue, and I just wanted to be in front of this before maybe it got a little sideways. I have concerns in my own neighborhood that this is becoming more prolific, and having people that are on site and maybe renting out a portion or a back part of their house versus buying a home and just making it short term. I think there's a lot of room for things kind of get a little out of hand. So I just wanted to voice my opinion and concerns about that, and having something on the books to address and be in front of it before it becomes an STR branded neighborhood. Just because the desirability of our location, we're close to Midtown and of course downtown. So I personally don't want to be next door to 6 motorcycles that come in and rent a house for a street violations person. So that's where I'm headed with this.
Which neighborhood are you in?
We're going,
Yeah.
specifically, I'm on Arroyo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ward 1 is all for, and I've been talking about it for 7, 8 years. That short-term rental ordinance just cannot get any traction with the rest of the council, unfortunately. And I know it's going on in other wards, but it's not.
Well, apparently that we need to make more noise.
You really do. You really do. It's been in the paper, I've talked about it, meetings just cannot get there. Start with the mayor, I'd say, because it's just not getting done, and it has nuisance homes. And then it's affordable housing, particularly where,
Yeah, I mean,
it's not been sought out.
Yeah, it is frustrating to help benefit somebody else's wealth at the cost of my own. And I live with the inconvenience not. So, that's where I really see this heading.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment?
I don't have any other public comment registered in the room. Would anyone else in the room like to give public comment today? There'll be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. Would anyone on the Zoom like to give public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment, please indicate by raising your hand using the Zoom feature at the bottom of the screen. We do have one public commenter on Zoom, Nona Perry. Nona, I'm going to allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute and you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, thank you for always showing up, you guys. You guys do a great job. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I live right next to Oxbow Park. I think you guys have been hearing from me for years. This is the time of year when the homeless climb out of the ore ditch and go down and live in the park. I've already seen them start going down there. And there's also like cars and trucks that come down and bring them stuff. And a piece of me doesn't mind, but the other part of me knows that I pay like $4,000 a year just in taxes to live here. and they can just be down there even though the park's closed and nobody seems to care. So I just, this is still before the messes start. They just started going down in there. So I just always hoping that somebody's going to start manning the park again. Years ago, they used to have somebody from the Department of Wildlife that stayed in that building like all day and watched out for stuff, but supposedly there's no money anymore. They only come when the school buses come. So that's all. Thanks. I appreciate your letting me talk.
Thank you.
We'll put in a service request on that. We have one in on the eastern end of Dickerson, because one of your neighbors called, but we'll put one in over there if there isn't one already. Right, Tim?
Was she addressing Oxford?
Oxford.
The
The terminus of Dickerson.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
she lives right, yeah.
Okay. Any other public comment?
Would anyone else like to give public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. Mr. Chair, there's no one else who'd like to give public comment on Zoom.
Thank you. Move on to item A3, approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting, May 8th, 2023. Has everybody had a chance to review any changes, adjustments?
There are no changes, Mr. Chair.
We're going to need a motion.
I second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? How about it, Aaron?
Nick, are you in favor of approving the agenda? Might be having some technical difficulties.
Just they abstain.
I'd also like to note for the record that member Werninghouse is present.
Thank you. That motion passes. We're going to move on to item A4, approval of the minutes from March 13th, 2023. I believe we do have a change or an adjustment.
There was one correction. I don't know if there was a Flint 87, 88, but 97, 98 was, I believe, what we talked about.
Thank you for the correction. I will make sure it is changed in the official minutes.
Anybody else have any other corrections they'd like to make? We'll need a motion to approve. Yeah. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to item A5, council liaison.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. Councilmember Ruckus. It's been really busy, for me and, my office that Tyler helps me staff. We, are in budget. And even though the council kind of did more of an abbreviated budget than years past, and I wasn't happy about that, it's still been a lot to deal with. Cause, I think, it's the most important job this council does. So we've been in budget. We should be closing it up by, I think the 18th is our adoption date. It's a pretty much flat budget. And you might have heard that because the legislature's in session and revenues are looking strong for them, but there's so much divergence between what the state revenue sources are and the local government revenue sources are, and ours are kind of deteriorating. So it's a scary time, particularly because the council has added a lot of positions the last couple of years. They're boosted up some of those labor agreements and then took on debt on the general fund. So we've got a lot of obligations and have to demonstrate a lot of discipline, which is tough when you're growing. So that's going on. And then the legislature has kind of taken me by surprise how busy and involved I've been in this year. I'm focusing on a bill. Well, there was SB 12. That was the one about how the city council does their elections. That bill is not moving forward. So there will be a redistricting effort to have a 6th ward drawn. And the council is going to discuss how to do that at our Wednesday meeting. Another bill that I've been focusing on is an open meeting law bill. That's like the rules of how we meet today. And this is Reno actually today just published a determination I got from the Attorney General's office that basically it's okay for people like me who are elected to be told we can't go to our own meetings. So, And I had concern that was gonna happen, so I'm trying to get some folks who are working on that law to change that, because I think the public wants to see their elected officials go down to City Hall and meet at meetings. And they should make the choice, not a city manager, not a mayor. But along those lines, the planning commission has also adopted some bylaws that are promoted by staff that would possibly make, with the selection of staff, all remote planning commission meetings. That's a no-go for me too. I don't mind these meetings, or technical meetings being remote, but frankly, I think, you know, the legislature, if the cities are doing stupid stuff, they should preempt them and tell them how it's gonna be. But a city that really cares about, you know, open government should always find a way to have meetings. I don't care if it's the most, you know, non-consequential recommending body of, you know, how to paint the bridge. Committee should always have an in-person and an option. And we're going really the other way, in my view. We're going remote. And one legislator tried to get a bill in where an elected official or a board member had to have at least a 25% attendance in person rate. And that went down. And I suggested to her that if someone's going to call into the meeting, they need to say the state, city, and country they're in. And that'll hold people pretty accountable. Because if you're all over and you can't make your own meetings, maybe you're really not that interested in doing local government business. Or if you're 5 miles away in your house, you know, why can't you come down to your meeting? So I think this is going to be a big issue. I don't know what the legislature is going to do. They know that the Attorney General says that a city manager can tell elected officials, stay at home, don't come down, non-emergency situations. So that's one thing. The legislature's in session, been taking a lot of time. One thing I really want to talk about is that at the City Hall, we staff did a great job. They got us one of those small vacuum sweepers for the streets and paths. And they were able to make some of the reform I've been advocating for on how RTC finances things, and RTC brought some money to the table. But it's gonna, when we accepted the purchase, it's going to be able to do street sweeping in alleys. Because alleys are getting a lot of residential units, they've never swept. And so for the fall leaf season, they're gonna incorporate this smaller sweeper into alley sweeping, which is gonna be great, because people have been asking for that for years. So that's about it, you know, some of the other focus has been on, you know, how much flooding we're gonna see, what we're gonna see out of the North Valleys. It's concerning. The river, I think, has shown to be, we'll talk about Keystone Ave Bridge, but, you know, managed. So other than that, I think a lot of the staff and operations are just getting their head up, you know, up from the storms, the continuous storms. And that's about what's going on at City Hall.
All right, questions? Deteriorating revenues, is that predominantly because of housing slowdown?
Property taxes are running well, and it will probably continue to go forward, but they're not necessarily predicted to offset the crumble in the sales tax. And that's where the cities in particular and the counties have their, you know, distribution of tax revenue there. Whereas the state gets other features and school districts get other features too. So it really is sales tax. And I was, actually I was on the RTC Citizens Advisory Committee for the bus system, which was overly sales tax dependent around 2008, 2009, 2010. And when sales tax goes, it goes off a cliff. So it's bad, it can have bad implications. But and then the other thing is franchises revenue was doing okay, because everyone was using electric, keeping warm and all. So that was a little bit of an offset, but sales tax is a big concern.
Any other questions for Jen?
The assembly bill that you're referencing, that discussion? Would it Assembly bill or Senate bill is that?
The two going for the open meeting law right now are AB 219 and AB 52. I was driving back today from visiting my folks. I didn't hear the Senate Government Affairs, heard that one today. But, you know, I sent them, they know, and this whole remote participation is, I think it's just gonna be an issue to grapple with for a long time with governing bodies, because people want to see people who are making decisions in person.
Any other board questions for Jen? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item A6, staff liaison report.
Tyler Shaw, Community Liaison for the record. I have a little bit more substantial of an update for all of you today. Last time we met, you all asked if I could come up with some information regarding special events in the city. And we do actually have a special events website that I wanted to direct you all to. It's reno.gov/government/city-events-list. And I'll make sure to send this out to all the board members and include it in the packet for public distribution. But when you go to this webpage, it shows all these special events that the city has going on, and it also shows public meetings. And you can see we've got 158 items on there right now. And this first page is just the first part of May, pretty much. So you can go through and see what special events are happening, where they're happening, decide if you want to participate or see if it's going to affect you or your community. So like I said, I'll be sending all of that out. And then I also wanted to talk to you all about Barbara Bennett Park. I did connect with Parks and Recreation. They have not published the survey yet. Once it is published, there will be additional information about it. And I'll make sure it's included on a NAV agenda for everyone to discuss. But just letting you know, I haven't forgotten, still working on it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, several of the NAV members' terms are expiring in July. Most of you have the option for another term, but you will have to reapply. That's members Wager, Tyson, Warninghouse, and Piskovich. I'm going to be reaching out to all of you separately to see if you are interested in reapplying and getting that process going.
I submitted mine.
Oh, perfect. Ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
perfect.
you were going off, Mike.
I got an email that said that.
His term will expire in on July 31st, and it's his second term. So according to the NAV rules, there's a 1-year cool down period.
When did we start?
I don't
That's
know.
the question. Okay.
I feel like you've been on every committee all the time.
Pretty much. You were appointed for your second term on August 1st of 2021.
2020.
Second term, the 2-year term.
Oh, they're 2-year terms.
Yeah. 2-year.
Yeah, because the 2020 didn't.
Yeah. And he was on way back, way before.
Mhm.
So you're not eligible, okay.
I don't know.
I'm
Well, it sent me an email to reapply. That's the question. So then I reapplied.
We work with the city clerk. They're having some trouble with their application notification system. It's sending out strange emails, and I know some of you have gotten strange emails, so I'll be reaching out to all of you individually,
I
including.
reapplied. So they
Mr.
should
Chairman.
run the shredder.
Well, maybe they'll approve it.
So what are the limits?
So every NAV member can serve for 2 consecutive terms. Each term is 2 years. After those 2 terms, there's a 1-year cool down period where you can't serve. After that 1 year, you can reapply for another term, and it's the same, it just repeats. Serve 2 terms, 1 year off, 2 terms.
Oh, because when they said Mike was in that position, I am too. This is my,
Oh, it is your second
Second.
term.
I have a,
but I got the email, so I reapplied. So,
if there's a gap between the terms, I assume because the code is all previous stuff,
Mhm.
is it still consecutive?
I'll work with the clerk to look at the resolution and the attorneys to see exactly what the rules are, and I'll reach out and let you
We
know.
technically had a year off or more, right? of
right,
COVID.
because of COVID, so maybe,
But nobody resigned their position, so you're still technically,
All right.
it's.
I'll leave it to the city attorney, but
Yeah.
I'll reach out for everyone and just
Okay,
see
great, but it's
see what we can do, yeah.
And also, you know, like before, last year, we have to think about redistricting, and if someone comes on and then they go into another ward, it's like, oh boy, I don't want that again.
Yeah.
Okay,
That is the end of my update. Does anyone have any questions?
You've made too many questions.
Sorry, everybody.
All right, we're gonna move on to business items, B1 4th Street and Woodland Avenue roundabout update, RPC staff.
Is there a look or are you gonna advance the slide?
Just say slides and I'll advance it for you.
Okay, is there anywhere I should sit or stand?
so it's better up here, I think, because the,
The camera
because
sees
the,
better.
that, yeah.
Okay, here, Hey guys, I'll do one. My name is Paul Nelson. I'm the Government Affairs Officer at RGC. I also have Doug Malloy here. He is the project manager for the Fourth Woodland Roundabout. Next slide. So this project is on West Fourth Street. It's west of McCarran Boulevard as you're driving towards Mobile, and it's kind of a 2-for-1 project. Roundabout is gonna go right there at the intersection of Woodland and Fourth Street, but it's also gonna make some improvements over there on Mesa Park Road. So there's a lot of warehouses down to the south of Fourth Street right there, so there's a lot of traffic that goes in and out to warehouses, but there's also a residential neighborhood to the west of there. And Woodland is the main entrance to get into that neighborhood as well. You look at Mesa Park Road right there at the top, that one also leads up to a residential neighborhood and eventually turns north into Mayan Avenue. Both of these intersections have stop signs to get onto West Fourth Street, but that can get kind of tricky at times because sometimes there's a lot of traffic coming and they're driving at high speeds. I think part of that road is 50 miles an hour. So it's hard to get onto that road right there on Fourth Street safely. There's actually been some pretty significant crashes that have happened right around those intersections. Next slide. So adding this roundabout, this is kind of what the configuration is expected to look like. It'll make both intersections safer because traffic on Fourth Street will have to slow down as it gets closer to the roundabout. The project also includes 80-foot multi-use paths, and that'll be good for people that want to ride the bikes in the area or people that are walking. It has a mounted truck apron, concrete median islands, and some low maintenance landscaping. The center median also forces traffic that's coming down from Mason Park Road. It has to turn right now. So you can't even turn left there. You have to turn right, loop around the roundabout and go back towards Reno. So that makes it a little bit safer for them too. Next slide. Now, the studies show that there's quite a few benefits to having roundabouts. It reduces crashes by 30%. That's a lot because there's a lot fewer head-ons, a lot fewer T-bones, and crashes at roundabouts aren't severe because they're going at low rates of speed when they do happen. They also reduce the delays because people aren't sitting at traffic signals and they're not sitting at stop signs. They also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions for some of the same reasons, because instead of sitting there at a stop sign or a stoplight idling, you're actually moving and getting on the road faster. They also make it a lot safer for pedestrians and cyclists because it gets people off of that road away from the cars, and you can see there's crosswalks that are outside of the roundabout itself. And then most people, I think, would agree that roundabouts add a little bit more aesthetics. They're a little bit easier on the eyes because you don't have the stoplights sitting there. You've got the roundabout, you can put some art there. You can also have some landscaping that goes along with it. Next slide. So this is where we're at right now with construction. Mesa Park Road is closed. I think we started this project right towards the end of March. Mesa Park Road is going to be closed likely for the most part of May, and the reason that's closed is because they're building a retaining wall underneath that roadway in order to make it for that roundabout. So really the only way you can access Mesa Park Road, that residential area, is going to be from the north. Now, there are some lane configurations and two-way traffic control on 4th Street and Woodland Avenue. That's just going to come with some of the construction issues that happen along that road. And there's also going to be some intermittent flagging operations. So drivers should be ready for delays that could take up to 20 minutes, depending on what kind of work's going on. Next slide. Again, my name is Paul Nelson. I'm the Government Affairs Officer. If you guys have any kind of questions, need to reach me, my email is on the slide. You can also find more information on the website for the project for woodlandroundabout.com. We also have some animation from that website, like here, if you want to expand that screen. This shows a pretty good layout of what this roundabout's gonna look like once it's all built and ready to go.
Sorry, just making sure it's sharing the sound. Maybe there's no sound.
All right, so you can see this is like overhead view. Flying over Mesa Park Road right there. Right there on the left side of the screen, now you can see that retaining wall that's being built right now. Couple of bicyclists right there too, so you can see kind of some of the improvements where it's gonna help out with pedestrians and bicyclist safety. Right here, that's what I was talking about, where the cars are coming from Mesa Park Road, they're gonna have to turn right now. Follow those red arrows, loop around and then head back towards Reno. That's gonna keep them from having to cross over 2 lanes of traffic, and it's gonna really cut back on some of those T-bone crashes that we've had in this area in the past. This shows the traffic as you're driving to the west from Reno. This makes the turn into Woodland Avenue quite a bit easier. You're gonna just loop around that roundabout, go right in, the semi truck right there. There are gonna be quite a few trucks going in and out of this location because of the warehousing. And you guys have probably seen trucks going around these roundabouts before. Sometimes they can get a little bit tricky. This one should have plenty of space for them to get around. This also makes it, you saw how easy that was from Woodland to get on the street, onto 4th Street and go to the west. And then this here is the first person view, if you're driving towards Reno, coming up into the roundabout. It's pretty simple, it's just like any other roundabout. I know there's a lot of debate whether or not roundabouts are a good idea or not. I showed you the reasons why they are a good idea. Really just take people, to yield to traffic, be careful. And it's pretty simple. We've seen a lot fewer accidents in these roundabouts. And that wraps it up for me. Anybody have questions?
I have several questions because I ride to Bird Eye 3 times a week in the summer. And so coming down Mesa Park, is that a yield or a stop sign as they come off Woodland and head west to make the loop around the roundabout?
That'll still be a stop sign right there. Yeah.
Because I was watching the van on that one, because I've actually seen somebody actually get hit by a car that came off. And then went through the stop sign, didn't see him, so I just want to make sure it's not a yield or.
There's a stop sign, they will have to use the traffic, that one direction of traffic only is whatever's coming from the.
The other bicycle question would be is that I saw markings on the ground, you can see them there where the bicyclists are allowed to be in the traffic lane. We're not expected to go onto the sidewalk and then back off.
Yeah, with the multi-use path, is it encouraged they're gonna use the path or
Yeah.
this be used the?
It would be, yeah, I think it's the best way to go through the roundabout. It's gonna have ramps.
Well, it's just like the one at Del Webb Parkway and 4th Street or Highway 40, right? That's the same. It's the same as you come out of Somerset, you come
Okay.
down. But I'm just saying, you got, what my point was that you have bicycle marking there. And the arrows to go through on the asphalt. Because it's too hard to come off and then back across the sidewalks, and then that's the idea with bicycles?
I think the idea, if you look at the configuration of the multi-use path, is to keep people out of the roundabout, pedestrians and cyclists.
But that's-
She's supposed to be on that gray section there, right?
Where
Someone like me will do that, but the people who ride out to Bird Eye, they're the hardcore cyclists, they ride in packs, they're not gonna do it, they're gonna take the roundabout. Always,
And that's what that show is.
Yeah,
showing.
and so to be clear that they have the option, yeah,
Just be heads up, right?
that's what they do.
So my next question is Woodland. Well, since I'm running the meeting, I get to have more questions. Woodland there, you got the railroad crossing. I've seen it when there's a train stop there, this is starting to back up. The odds are that it starts to back up into the roundabout? Because now what happens, you have turn lanes, which allows the cars to move constantly. But if you get a train that backs up, they're gonna back up into the roundabout. So has there been any thoughts on that?
That's true, and we are aware of that. Right now, if you're going around traffic, it backs up now, right? So if there's anybody trying to get in, to Woodland from either direction, it is gonna back up. If you're going around them, you're going in the other lane of traffic. So you're doing an illegal move as it is. So yes, it is gonna back up. We did model all this. I mean, it's the track proximity is an issue. And if it, you know, if it was overhead or something, we wouldn't have this issue.
Isn't there turn lanes currently on Fourth Street?
There are turning pockets.
Right, turn lanes that they would turn into to turn on the wood,
Right.
right? So that at least allows for it to,
There's a little bit of storage there that way for sure.
but with a roundabout, there is no storage.
Correct.
Okay, just so that I throw that out. Other questions, other than mine? Oh, look at her. Let's go. Carla.
Yeah.
just-
Yeah, Carla Warninghouse for the record. I don't think there's a huge amount of pedestrian traffic in that area. I think it's mostly cars and bicycles, but I do see that there are markings there for crosswalks for pedestrian crossing. But as we mentioned, those cars are going pretty fast, even when they're approaching the roundabout. Are there gonna be flashing lights or anything for pedestrians to encourage safety crossing? Otherwise, I'm not sure that people are gonna slow adequately for them.
Yeah, again, Doug Moy. This is designed with really potential for some pedestrian connectivity in the future. As you know, there are no sidewalks. It's this whole highway, right? So this is somewhat urbanizing a little bit in that regard, but there's no place to go, obviously, when you get to the other side. So I don't anticipate there's gonna be a whole lot of pedestrian use here. If it were to become an issue, yeah, we try not to signalize roundabouts or do what you're talking about, flashing beacons. If it ever is warranted, we take a look at that and take a look at whether that's the appropriate device to be put in there.
And having lived half a block or whatever out there, there's surprisingly a lot of people walking at 2 o'clock in the morning around there.
Well, this is gonna make it safer because there's no crossings out there currently, right? That I'm aware of.
Correct.
Yes.
But now if you put a crossing, you give them a path, they will use it. So,
And again, as Paul mentioned, this speed will be slower through here, right? It's 50 miles an hour pretty constantly. You've got two conflicting intersections that create some more confusion and challenges with going across the road for sure. So overall, it's going to be a safety improvement. There's no question about that. And like I said, speeds will be slower. When you hit that crosswalk, you better be doing about 25 or so, or you're going to have issues getting through it. That's the way they're typically designed.
one would help.
Exactly that. It's designed for the best situation we can there, but still.
How far out do you start stepping down the speed? Because people fly through there, right? If there was enough room, they would actually land planes.
Oh, as far as the strategy, yeah, we're not reducing the speed limit through there, so it will just be there.
From 15 to 25, like that.
Is that all your questions?
Yeah.
Carla, were you done?
Yeah.
There, I take it back, there will be signs, I don't know where they're at, actually, don't know. And I can get back to you.
Yeah, I'm just one of those people who think roundabouts are one of Dante's circles of hell, but that's just my experience with them. But my more serious question is, I had an appointment a couple of weeks ago where usually I would go up Mesa Park Road. I didn't see any indication that that road was going to be turned off, and so I had to end up driving to Verdi to switch around and do my appointment. Do you have some warning signs up during construction that say that that road is closed and people should not be going down 4th Street that far?
There are detours, there's a detour in Mayberry, and there's a detour, I believe that's mentioned on the freeway as well. So you wouldn't need to be on the freeway, it's probably just to the west.
No, I just thought perhaps there should have been a sign that warned that Mesa Park Road was closed during construction, so that if that was a preferred route for people, they wouldn't go down there.
I haven't been up there recently, I apologize. The changeable message boards were in place just to indicate that in advance of this phase of construction. Whether they're out there still saying that I'm not certain of.
There was nothing there when I was there a couple of weeks ago, but
I drove out there today and if I remember right, there was one sign going to the west. I didn't go past Woodland, but if you're going west, there was a sign there and also had the speed limit saying that the speed limit would be 35. That's in the construction area.
And Chris, right by the one always tells me to slow down.
Jerry, did you have a question?
No.
We're gonna look forward first.
Well, I was, I live out there, I go through there almost every day. I'm excited about the project, so I'm glad you guys did it. And I emailed you a while ago, it's getting me right back to. The train, the original design included some additional striping, like double stacked or 2 wide lanes on Woodland. Is that still part of the design to help with some of that buffer?
That was going to occur within UPR's right of way. And we weren't able to make that happen. The shoulders are there, you could stack there, but it's not officially done that way because it is UPR. Right.
So how far does the right of way go from the track?
200 feet, I think.
So they own the road all the way up to like 4th Street?
I don't have that.
Because it's in this animation right there. And that's a really good thing. And if there's a way to make that striking change there, because that's going to increase the amount of cars that can queue up behind a train. And move people out of that roundabout. And do look on a regular basis.
I believe, did you ask me that question? Maybe not.
I think it was the person who's running it before you did.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know they ran into some issues with that. So, like I said, the space is there, it's paved, it'll be wide enough for that to occur, but it's just not a lane crossing the tracks per se, right? Just like parking area, if you will.
Yeah. So I don't know, I'm sure there's a way to creatively describe it. Call it an extra wide bike lane or something like that. I don't know. But to get people out of the roundabout, because that's still gonna be a problem. The other thing is, yeah, you answered. So my daughter was right. She said they're gonna open Mesa Park when school ends.
I mean, May 26th is the target date. I don't know if the weather's affected construction or not, but
It's been okay, I think that's good. We get this first phase.
All right.
Yeah, you know, I've represented this area for 11 years and they have a great quality of life out there for the residents, but I did research on this subdivision when it was approved and it should never have been approved under the conditions of that grade crossing there without a secondary access. And I read the planning commission minutes and everything and it really, they knew they should not have been approving it and they did. They kind of left some things hanging, but people love it out there. It's a great community, but it's a lot of concern. ProPublica, which is an independent national news media source, just did an expose on train blockages in cities, and they pictured one in the south, and some of the stuff that's in that story, I've heard stories about from people out here, so it's really, really scary. And I've had a lot of concerns from folks. Seems like they managed a little bit better, but are you seeing anything during construction? I mean, do you have the magic phone call in Omaha to say, we got a problem here? I mean, are you guys talking to them?
To the railroad.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we have to do a design agreement with them. I don't know if it's the people that would jump out there and take care of things, to be honest with you, but we had communications with them throughout the design phase of this project.
yeah, but even during the construction, you know,
Right.
because people, you said 20 minutes, up to 20 minutes. And it's a long way, you know,
Yeah.
but if it's 30, 40 minutes, when people are trying to get home and there's the daycare at Patagonia, it's like, oh gosh. You know, that's a tough one. But the other question is the spot improvement. It really is a spot improvement on a rural highway. And, you know, I think it's a great solution, but what is the status of NDOT? Because NDOT did a rural highway design study for the McCarran to the terminus. And where are they at? And then also, are they gonna have the city take this over once you guys put this in?
This is still gonna be maintained by. and-
Okay, they're not gonna relinquish, but when are they gonna get the rest of it done? Cause it's not good.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that they did the study, NDOT did, because this is NDOT's facility. It goes as far as, I believe, McCarran, but
Yeah.
it continues similarly to
Yeah.
the east. We're advancing a project, the RTC is advancing a project to do improvements on Fourth Street from Keystone to McCarran.
Yeah,
I'd say that anything beyond that is possibly in the RTP as a long-range project to do some multimodal improvements. It's a big lift, I can
Yeah.
tell you that, it's a big lift. But, you know, that's the best that I know right now, is that, you know, in the long-range plan, and it might probably in the out years.
okay, thanks.
Right. Another question back here.
Well, I would just like to follow up. I also ride my bike. I have for years out on Fourth Street to Mogul and Bird Eye. And I have 2 points. One, I think that the speed limit along there is far, far too high. It's ridiculous. I was almost killed about 10 years ago. And it was somebody who was probably going about 70. But when you have, and they cross the center line, and only because I had fast reflexes, I didn't die. But when you have a speed limit of 50, people are gonna go 60. So I think that that's something, I also am not sure how people are gonna slow down from 50 to 25 for the roundabout. I think that's unrealistic.
Yeah, that's an NDOT question as to why it's 50, and if there are any plans to reduce that speed, but it's been that way for some time, it's my understanding. So this project obviously wasn't trying to address that. It was trying to make this situation here better. As I mentioned, I'm fairly certain there's some speed limit signs that do appear there, and hopefully people are gonna get familiar with this too. I mean, mostly use it regularly, but that doesn't take care of those that maybe aren't from the area.
Well, actually, I mean, I think that's a really heavily traveled section of road by lots of people who live both in Mogul and who are getting onto the freeway. And most of the traffic that I see on that road is local, it's Nevada plates. I do see some California plates, for example, people from out of town, but those are not the folks who are speeding. So I think it's a big concern. I mean, I think this is a good idea, but I do think there will be problems if the speed limit isn't adjusted to accommodate the roundabout.
We can get that safety study and look at it and, you know, and we can have a conversation with NDOT and our traffic engineer. Put that thing down at 45.
Right, any
And
else?
also when you've got the medians in there and the curvature of the road right there, that's gonna naturally have people slow down as they approach.
So what's in the center of the roundabout? To keep people from going straight? Because we've seen roundabouts that are built up, right, and make it more difficult to go straight across. But a lot of times you'll see tire tracks, right, straight.
It's gonna have a burn, it's gonna have a natural burn that be mountable. There's nothing physical barrier in that roundabout that can show that I'm aware of.
And that was where I was, my question was, if we look at the roundabout, that's off Kidsky south of Lowe's, there's a barrier, it's a barrier roundabout, whereas like what we see in Midtown, to your point, I just see large trucks just drive straight through it and like it's nothing. So that's what I'm wondering, is it gonna have a barrier of some kind, or is it just gonna be so if you have a big jacked up truck, you just drive right through it?
It may have a curb. It's probably what this is designed for. I apologize, I don't know the details of that.
I was just wondering if this is a new roundabout for emergency vehicle access or something like that, or intentionally made low now or something, I have no idea. If the ones that are on the backside of Renown, that way Steve be that way too, where they're just like curbless.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I have one favor I'd like to ask both of you. If you can use your NDOT connections and have them street sweep from Mayberry. At least to the River Ranch thing out there, because during construction on a bike, you're forced right to the edge. And nobody sweeps it, so it's all sand and gravel, so you're on a road bike, I'll typically gonna be in the travel lane where there is no gravel. So we're kind of being forced out there, but if they could at least sweep it, there's sand everywhere, I'd appreciate it. Thank you for coming tonight, we do appreciate it. All right, thank you. We're gonna move on to item B2, discussion of Keystone Bridge.
Oh, yes, this is the favorite topic of ours here. We're gonna talk about ROTC quite a bit.
You see how fast they go.
There's no bellies. So, we had a lot of discussion about Keystone Avenue Bridge. And talk about Keystone Avenue Bridge, about talking about the dysfunctional way in which transportation is budgeted and planned in this region right now. There's a recent article in the Reno Gazette Journal about RTC. And while that was more on leadership, there is a governance problem over at RTC that I think is responsible for the reasons why, some things were not getting done well. But when I came on in 2010, I was a little concerned about Keystone Avenue Bridge. At that point, Virginia Street Bridge was under design. So the Great Flood in 1997 resulted in a tax, so 8 cents sales tax, I think, region-wide for improvements on the Truckee River for flood control. And the idea was a bridge was going to get done, redo all the bridges. So the focus for a decade after that flood was bridges, flood control, bridges, flood control. I came on in 2012 and just really had concerns about Keystone Avenue, more from a pedestrian issue way, and they have rectified it with the pedestrian ramp down to Booth Street, because they had steps and it was not complying with Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's a walkway down to Reno High for kids from the neighborhoods up there. So they did do that, and right now they're actually doing more improvements up at Newlands, but started asking about the bridge condition itself. And so 2012 started getting, by 2014, 2011, I was starting to get the information of who was looking at the Keystone Avenue Bridge for structural issues. I received a 2010 report, technical memorandum on Keystone Avenue Bridge saying, yeah, it's not that great. And then in 2014, it was inspected and I got the inspection report, and that did give a lot of confidence. And then, but weathering an old bridge, but then around that time, you might remember, Mike, we had like 4 district engineers ago from NDOT came and said, well, we think it's in, it's gonna hold, it's gonna need repair, but if you see anything, let us know. Do you remember that? And everyone is like, wait, you're the head of the whole district engineer for Nevada, and you're telling all us citizens to keep an eye out on the bridge? That does not make one comfortable. And then at that time, these questions, I think, did lead to a budget in the Reno, because Reno takes care of the bridges, of going down and scouring the piers, because they weren't scouring the piers. The piers are underwater and they need to, someone needs to go down and get gunk off or something. So they were starting to that, and I saw that in the budget every year. And then we had some under 4.0 earthquakes, and I started asking about, what's the protocols for checking bridges after earthquakes? And bridges are pretty much, there's some standardization of how bridges are looked at from the federal government to the state governments, to the local governments. And so, inspecting bridges is like a required thing. And NDOT does that, even though it's an NDOT report, even though it's a City of Reno facility. And that's typical because the expertise to go and examine and inspect bridges usually relies more at a state level. It's not efficiencies to have one traffic engineer in a city go check their bridge, and then the other city have the traffic engineer over there, So there's standardization on bridge inspections. And then there's a set aside through federal money for bridge bridge construction too, under all the federal money, you know, such that it is, that goes down to the states and then goes to the locals. And Nevada does pretty well on our bridges because we don't have a lot of them, because we're not particularly, you know, wet water. So we do pretty well with that, but that money has been gobbled up. It got gobbled up with the flood tax, and some of that money went to Virginia Bridge. And then the next thing you started hearing around 2007, 8, was that the next bridge that RTC was gonna do, this is the fragmented transportation planning, was gonna be Arlington Avenue Bridge. So I'm like, wait, why are they doing the Arlington Avenue Bridge next? I always thought the next one for flood purposes was Lake Street Bridge. But, you know, they're like, no, we're gonna do Arlington Avenue Bridge. And this was maybe, this was later, you know, when we started, I don't know. No, it was, I'm sorry, I got my days wrong. That was maybe 2016, 2017, 2018, and said, well, wait, they're, you know, said, we're just going into design on Arlington. What about Lake? They're like, no, Arlington's worse. Well, what about Keystone? It's not a flood bridge, but it's a structural bridge. And they said, our Keystone's gonna need to be done, but it can wait. Arlington's next. And then, you know, never mind all the other bridges. They built 4 bridges doing the Southeast Connector, and that was all local money, no federal money. And so, you know, this last couple of years, and I think at our last NAB, a citizen just walked in off the street and was asked about Keystone Avenue Bridge before I got to the meeting. And I've been asked about it. I've been getting the inspection, scouring reports and everything. Potholes, you know, girders, kind of, are those, I think those are the plastic things, you know, kind of flapping in the wind. And still do always get the same report from everyone, whether it's, you know, mostly city engineering is who I talk to. It's been a while since I've talked to RTC folks. And I don't sit on RTC. That's part of the problem at RTC is they have too small a board, and everyone who's on that board ends up getting projects into the board. And I never wanted to be that person. I really think that we need to depoliticize but we need to maintain what we have first before we build new. That's like theory of transportation and funding. But you know, the engineers keep saying, you know, it looks rough, but it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And RTC is under design. RTC is under design. And the latest I think we're hearing is that they're gonna go under construction in 27. Is that what we're hearing, Tyler?
Not sure.
Okay, but they're saying it's right around the corner, which to me seems like it's jumping over Arlington Avenue, because I haven't seen a final design in Arlington Bridge. But at our meeting just last week, the engineer at the city said they're going by and inspecting the Keystone Avenue Bridge twice a day, which is like, oh boy, if a bridge needs to get inspected twice a day by city staff, that doesn't make one feel good. And so the trucking, you know, and Tyler looked into this and they're all, wait, when you say they have been twice daily scour monitoring. Do you have a definition of scour monitoring is?
I don't, so I reached out to Trina Magoon, who is responsible for the inspections on the Keystone Bridge, and she let me know that the flows in the Truckee River have been below 3,500 CFS, which is the required threshold for twice daily scour monitoring. Unfortunately, I'm not super sure what that means. Since last Wednesday, but she did let me know that.
Oh, yeah,
I'm former in
oh, good.
what the scour is, when you have flows this high in the Truckee, it will scour under the piers, compromising the structure.
Oh, okay.
It's nothing to do with the inherent structure of the bridge. The scour is happening by the river, scouring out the river.
Oh, okay.
It's just hydraulics, so
Oh, okay.
that's the concern.
Okay, well, that's not good.
But that was the twice daily inspection. They were checking to make sure the bridge piers weren't being, undermined. They're not doing that anymore because the cubic feet per second has dropped. However, the NOAA California Nevada River Forecast Center is currently predicting that flows may increase again by this Thursday, where staff will resume twice daily scour monitoring until the flows subside. So it's not the integrity of the bridge, it's just making sure the piers aren't getting washed away.
And she also said that bridges are reviewed for bridge deck joint deflection, excessive debris buildup within the bridge span, abutment and bank armor failure, and bridge movement of things, under load. So, the questions have been asked. They've been asked a lot here, me, everyone. And they always, can tell you how it did after an earthquake because they have it automated there. We haven't had that many. They are now, with this high weather, high water, they're looking at it. So I don't know, it looks like hell. It looks absolutely like hell. It had potholes that they build and then they, need filling again. But I lived in a community years ago that had 125-year-old brick that looked terrible. You didn't spend so much money repointing every bit of brick. It was, all the architecture, construction people in town just said, they just always looked terrible, but they held very well. So I don't know, so we've had our discussion. We'll keep finding out where they are in design, but they are supposedly under design.
The day is,
RTC under design. But RTC, if you read that article, RGJ really politicizes things, and there's not enough money for everything. There's not enough money to go 6 miles out to, past Lemon Valley and around Swan Lake. And there's not enough money to put local money into the federal highway system. And, this region just is not, they have dealt with, the system they're building that is deteriorating and people still want to grow. And that's why projects seem to come on the schedule and then they drop off. And it's all a lot of political horse trading between the 2 city council members who get on, the 2 county commissioners, and the 1 Sparks person. That's why we have a real broken transportation system, in my view. And believe me, I'm the biggest advocate for redoing the Bird Eye overpass because the councils were so much development out there. But that Keystone Avenue Bridge, it needs to get done, in my view. And they say it, but they're not. They're not ready to, they say it's not unsafe, so.
All right, any questions for Jen? Oh, good.
Well, can I ask this guy a question? Where the chunks of concrete have fallen off the side of the bridge, is that a sign of falling or some other kind of, to me, that's why I stay off that bridge. I don't like going on something where I see big chunks of concrete have fallen off of it.
Yeah, and that would be addressed in the bridge report. I'd have to take a look at it, but you're right, they are very standardized, and if there's something unsafe, there's no politics or.
No.
And they're gonna say, so you can have, it can be functionally deficient, so not enough lane widths, it could be structurally deficient, which means it's close to falling down. And then you can also have chunks of concrete that could be aesthetic, just looks bad, or it could be structural. It just depends on what it says.
Yeah, this is the 2014 report, and there's been others since then. I don't mean there's politics involved in, keeping the bridge open when it should be open. I know everyone will do the right thing on that. It's about getting it from this design to program for the money coming in. And that's the big issue. And what jumps ahead of it. And so it's funding it to redo it. Yeah.
And there isn't enough funding for all of the needs. So, it is politics. That's what it boils down to is who's the squeaky wheel and they do it.
All right, thanks. We're going to move on to item B3, general discussion of board infrastructure and public investment.
Yeah, I don't have much on this. I do want to say that Watt Street seems to be done. It is done, as far as I can tell. There might be a little bit of, and they're calling it Watt Street. The one it is, but it's pretty much done. And there was a little bit of they came forward last meeting with the projects coming forward in the next couple of years. And they said about this next ones, they'll have a project that they may or may not be able to go early enough in the season, and they said if they can't figure out that they can get it done next fall, they ain't gonna do it this year. They are not gonna do another Watt Street. Which is good, because that was not fun for anyone. So, just want to let everyone know that, you know, it's not, that was an abnormal situation. And that was one that got redistricted into Ward 1, so we didn't have our eyes on it. I didn't have my eyes on it until it got redistricted. But they do not let projects overwinter like that, so lesson learned. So RTC has the 4th Street and Woodland roundabout, we talked about that. They have a preventive maintenance on Plum Lane and Plymouth Street. I can't remember the lengths of those. And then they're obviously doing the Newlands Circle work right now. We're all seeing that. They're thinking about reconstructing Cal Ave from Arlington to St. Lawrence. Oh, that would be this year, I don't know. But, and then redistricting preventive maintenance on several locations. Oh, you have it, good. What are the Reno?
So there's multiple locations for 2023 preventative maintenance candidates. You can see them here in the orange, not the orange with the dash, just the normal orange. And I wanted to share this resource with all of you. This is a city resource. All I did was look up City of Reno capital projects, but you can also see the link up here, and I'll make sure to include it when I email everyone. But there's a full project map here. And it's broken out by wards. So you can see everything that's happening in your ward. And this includes RTC projects, City of Reno projects, streets projects, sewer projects, and as well as parks and facilities projects. So you can see the orange there are preventative maintenance candidates, which is just surface treatment. There's also a couple street rehabilitation candidates. None for 2023. There's one for 2024 on Yorrie Avenue. And then there's another candidate in 2025 in a couple locations, which is this blue that you see through here. And then there's sewer projects in multiple locations. That's going to be the red and some of the orange lines as well.
And they try and get the sewer in some, you know, they usually try and phase the sewer in before they do a street. And actually, the last discussion where they told us they thought they were gonna get to Keystone Avenue Bridge around 26, 27 was because they're trying to push to get that Booth Street siphon project done before they start doing the Keystone Avenue Bridge. There's a little bit of discussion about that at council the other day. And that's obviously a huge sewer project.
And then there's a couple parks projects too. So there's a park surface replacement project at Summit Ridge Park. And there's also an Idlewild Pond and wall rehabilitation project. And then there's some renovations at Robin Hood Park.
We did, yeah, council has approved several of those. The Idlewild Ponds is gonna be like an $800,000 project, and it's lining, because those ponds are like clay, and once they've dried up and they refill, and it's just, you know, gonna get them with a better subsurface to hold water. And that's a good thing. You know, those were built WPA. And I didn't know about, we should go up there, Tyler, Summit, yeah, you know, the city has moved towards like a real spongy surface under the parks, you know, the fall zone where the play structures are. And I think they have had multiple generations of those. The ones now are just so much spongier and last longer than like the first generation. So I bet Summit Ridge is one of the earlier service ones they get beaten up pretty hard in our city, you know, our son. So I want to go up and see how that one feels and all. And then what about Oxbow? Did they take down the viewing station and rebuild that bench?
I'm not sure if that's done yet, your ARPA project. Still working with Parks on that. I think they're looking at summer, late summer for completion of that, but I'll keep you updated. They're in the process of ordering things is the last I heard.
Yeah, and we have a new parks director too. He's just gotten on board. So that's pretty much it. Parks, sewer, streets.
They're doing it lakeside. They have lakeside for us.
Well, you know, they might be doing sewer along Lakeside, actually. Cause that,
They have water and like,
they're supposedly done on water.
it's closed.
Yeah, that's close to rooms, like.
That is.
Yeah, Lakeside is.
I think that's sewer. I think that's sewer. That it was separate from the Watt Street project. That I think is sewer. Maine,
Yeah.
they came back for more money on that. Are you seeing anything on that, Tyler?
It does look like it's sewer, but I can't tell for sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask.
That neighborhood, I mean, oh boy.
Any questions for Jenny?
Okay. Oh,
So you say what is done, is paving not included in that project?
no, they paved. I walked it.
So just recently.
Yeah, I walked it.
Like last week.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is why I was surprised Lakeside was still nice.
yeah.
I was shocked because you couldn't cross it.
Any other questions for Jenny? All right.
Thanks, Tyler, for your help on that.
We're gonna move on to item B 4.1. 1565 Plymouth Street Townhome.
Where is that?
We'll find out.
We're just at the.
Right at 7-Eleven, it's
Not down Mount Rose or something.
like right behind
It's where?
7-Eleven on Mount Rose. Mount Rose
Oh,
in
okay.
Plymouth.
I'm trying to figure out where that was.
Right behind Granny's house.
That White
It's a
House.
great little lot. Big lot.
Not a little one.
Yeah. Big lot, not right there.
Yeah. Good evening, I'm Gabe Whitler, Odyssey Engineering. This is a 1565 Plymouth Street Townhomes project. It's a tenant map application for 17 single-family attached townhome units. Next slide, please. Here's an overall, we pointed out to you, that might help you see over there. This is the site here. This is Mount Rose and Plymouth, so it's just at the southwest corner of Mount Rose and Plymouth, between Arlington and South Virginia Street. This is an aerial showing the site overlay on an image. This is the 7-Eleven you're just discussing right down the street. This is the proposed layout imposed on the current parcel, which is just under an acre of land. Next slide. This is the master plan designation for the site. It's crosshatched there. The current master plan is designated mixed residential or mixed neighborhood, which is intended to provide either single family type lots or duplex type units. It's kind of intended to be a transition zone between what may be lower density residential to commercial, which we'll see to the north in pink, and to the west is suburban mixed use zoning. And then the mixed neighborhood extends to the south and is on the east side of Plymouth as well. Go next slide, please. This is the zoning designation. So our underlying zoning is multifamily residential, which is essentially 14 units per acre. Again, to the north, you have in the red is professional office zoning. To the west is neighborhood commercial. And then again to the south, for the next street at least, is multifamily designation as well. To the east, you'll see more multifamily. So there's a pretty significant buffer between this use and technically residentially, family residential zoning properties. I'd just like to point out that there's no change of zoning or increase in density request with this application. This is within this multifamily 14 MF 14 designation. This use is allowed. The only reason that we're going through the public hearing process is because it's a tentative map, which means we're actually mapping the units for sale, as opposed to if you went straight to more like family, where the units would be rent, not mapped. That by code could go straight to a staff level review and approval. Next slide, please. So this is the site layout. Again, the site is just under 1 acre. There'll be 6 buildings on site, totaling 17 proposed units. To the north there, you see the buildings are office, the commercial use. To the west is a commercial type coffee shop, I believe. To the south, you have existing residential units. Most of those units, you'll see on the assessor's page, have multiple addresses to them, which means they're being utilized as a duplex or some kind of multifamily style unit. So the proposed site will access off of Plumas. If you're familiar with the area, there was 6 residential style buildings on this one property. There were a total of 9 addresses associated with that property, which means there were also multifamily type uses in those buildings. Since demolition permit has been pulled through the city of Reno and the existing structure moved. So this will access up to Plumas in a hammerhead style, kind of like a mini cul-de-sac. So the fire department can come to the end, turn around if they need to. It'll be all private infrastructure, utilities, roadways. Being a for sale unit, each unit has a designated garage space associated with the parking calculation. There are a handful of on-site guest parking to keep people or to provide some space on site. There's a few on-street parking spaces available as well on frontage, but you can technically count towards your parking counts. I believe the parking requirement was 27 spaces and we have 36. This will give you a breakdown of the the building area. Total footprint's about 38% of the site. You'll see the average unit size there is 1,395 square feet. That's important. We'll get to in a second. There's a density allowance built into code in the multifamily zoning. The 25-foot max height, 2-story. There is an overlay zoning designation in this area, the Plumas neighborhood overlay, I believe. And so that has some building specific restrictions, and part of that's 25-foot max height. It also addresses roof pitch. But 2-story, usually 2-story units, that's a max you can do in this area. Most of the existing buildings that were on that site were 2-story. Site amenity landscape area, about a quarter of the site, and then site improvements, driveways and flat work is a third. Again, 17 units, so the existing zoning plus the Plumas neighborhood residential floor plan area full is what our zoning. So within an MF14 zoning, typically it's 1 per 3,000 square feet. In this case, that would yield 14 units, 1 acre, 14 units. Seems pretty self-explanatory. So the density bonus that's already built into code with a 1,400 square foot or less unit, you're allowed a 30% density bonus. So you take your allowed units, multiply that by 30%. So you could have up to 19 units on this property. And currently we're proposing 17 this layout. Again, you'll see the massing of the buildings. It's hard to make out at this scale on the screen, but so there'll be 6 buildings which appear to be, one large. Each building will appear to be one large residential type building. So I think that the massing fits pretty well with the surrounding footprints. You can see the existing buildings. The properties to the north again are commercial. Site lights. Next slide. This is a landscape plan, kind of depicting where the common areas are. So the intent here is the actual building footprint will be mapped. And then there's limited common elements. So each unit will have what feels like their own yard space. But the reason that's mapped as a limited common element is that there's cross drainage and utilities and things that need to be provided to facilitate the development. So that'll happen within not technically an open space common area, but one that specifically benefits the adjacent unit. And then the remainder of that, the areas will be common areas maintained by an association. With the intent to provide some evergreen screening at the back of the units. And then, you know, as much tree placement as possible to fit back in with the existing surrounding. Thanks. This is just a closer view of the site plan. Just depicts lot sizes, unit types and sizes. You can see how the pedestrian circulation would work internally. They will have their own trash enclosure type system as opposed to putting 17 bins out on Plymouth Street. So that, again, with the hammerhead style turnaround allows waste management to come in and turn around. There's no parking in the private driveways, it's fire lanes, so there'll be, you also can't park in front of the garages. They're designed to be too short to accommodate that, and plus CC&R's signage, striping, that sort of thing, to keep that private driveway free and clear for access and emergency access. Getting the hammerhead style turnaround for fire, and gives you an idea of setback. When you look at the site as a multifamily site, so you look at each massing of building, and so technically Plumas is your front. Side adjacent to the commercial space would be the rear yard setback, and then the north and south would be a side yard setback. So those are 5 feet minimum. We would increase that to anywhere between 8 to 11. For a number of reasons, both for building setback and their step back requirements as well associated with the architecture. Unfortunately, the architecture and elevations aren't quite ready yet, so I don't have anything to show at this point. So it is not part of the requirement for this type of application. For a tentative map, which essentially gets you approval for the lots themselves and so again, if this was just done presented as a multi-family project, it would go straight to staff level. Next slide, please. This just kind of gives you an overall picture of the neighborhood again. You can see the massing of the existing or not existing anymore, the pre-development buildings, and we did not keep the junkyard outdoor storage space that is done. We did have an arborist come in and do a study on the existing health of the existing trees to make sure that there wasn't something special that we needed to work around. So we will be replacing and improving with new landscape around the perimeter and the site common areas. Again, it's going to access the same as the existing condition. I know traffic's always a concern in any kind of development. So with this being 17 units, that technically counts out at 17 peak hour trips. 100 peak hour trips is the city's threshold to do a formal traffic study and access analysis. So it doesn't trigger that. And we're taking essentially 9 units, and I really couldn't speak to how many people were actually living in that area at any time. But changing from 9 to 17, and with the traffic counts that you see on Mount Rose and Plumas, ends up being essentially a significant change. So that's project in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I would forward the question. So
I have a handful, so thank you. You actually caught a couple of them already. But one thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about is the stormwater treatment there. I was a little confused about what I saw in the application because in one place the application we talk about something called lid. Which I didn't know what the hell it was, so I looked it up and EPA says it's basically some sort of drainage thing to allow water to go back into the ground. I don't see anything like that in these documents, so, you know.
Yeah, certainly. Could you please go back to the site plan? Yeah, that's perfect. So right now, this site drains from west to east. It just flows into the curb and gutter in Loomis, which takes it to the north into the storm drain system. We're gonna propose to keep the drainage patterns the same. And typically with the city of Reno design manual and standard practice, if you're under an acre, you typically don't have to do any mitigation volume wise. In this case, we're gonna collect our runoff from the paved areas in the valley gutter. That'll take it to kind of a depressed area, if you will. In fact, I think there's a good example out front. It looked like they did some rainwater. There's a little display, but that's low impact development. That's the lid or the LID that you're talking about. So you take it, you run it through a pond, essentially, you increase the infiltration potential of that. So you maximize the amount that can return to the ground. It also allows, a vegetated so it'll double as a landscape feature, but also it's helping to pre-treat the water before it's.
So it collects in the middle, goes out into the street or.
Yeah, it'll collect here, it'll funnel down a valley gutter, which discharge into this pond system, which then just has a sidewalk cross drain overflow. So it can then, once that pond fills up, if you have a significant event that exceeds the infiltration capacity of that pond, it'll overtop and run back down the street. City of Reno staff, one of their comments during review was, why not tie it into the storm drain system? My opinion, I like to keep the drainage patterns the same way they are. We could put an inlet here and tie it right into the storm drain. I kind of left that open ended to staff. Because of the city right away, we'll be improving the sidewalk connectivity, even though it doesn't go anywhere to the south. It does currently terminate at our north boundary. We'll extend the sidewalk, and part of that will be a couple of cross drains. So that's public infrastructure. The developer pays for and then dedicates to the city. So if the city decides we'd rather have an underground storm drain system, we can do that too. So that'll be part of probably our final conditions of approval and requirement permit.
Thank you for explaining that. My other question had to do with the size of the 2-car parking garages. Because I saw it was a big part of the parking calculation, and usually a lot of 2-car garages really aren't 2-car garages.
Yeah.
1 3/4 garages.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you had more information about that and how that made it.
Yeah. Yeah, these were laid out. Basically the setup or specifically for. Let's see, they're 20 feet roughly. Maybe this guy at 20 at the garage door. And then a little wider once you get inside the.
Any idea how deep they are?
So I'm a civil engineer. I don't. No, I said they're around 25 feet.
I think it's only 18 feet wide.
Which dimension is?
We have a 20, do I understand the dimensions? Are so many, 18 feet wide?
Yeah, so that's a single car garage. This type of unit would have a single car garage. Or, say a single.
Okay.
And then this would have a 2-car garage. So you got, you got 25, so you're looking at.
37 parking.
Where you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36.
You're counting on-street parking?
Yeah, that's the first road you get to count on street parking, although we don't technically need it. 27, I believe, is our required number based on the calculations. In this type of zoning, the parking calculation is actually a fraction of the square footage of the unit. So that's how you come up with your required parking. And that number is actually met with the units themselves with their own. So between the gas and on-street parking, it's kind of just a bonus for.
So there's parking in that common area where waste management's gonna be turning around?
Correct. Yeah, so there's 1, 2, 3 parallel style parking stalls. So this heavy dash line you can see, that's the clear zone. That has to stay clear for both waste management and Reno Fire. If they ever had to come in, back up and turn around. That's what we call a hammerhead style turnaround. And then once you, in a single family style, you wouldn't have to provide an ADA stall, but being in a multi-family zoning, once you have on-site parking, technically, if you have a stall, you need an ADA stall. So that
I have a question. You said that you couldn't park a car in the driveway. How long are the driveways?
about 8 feet. These are 8.
I mean, wouldn't you be better off having some parking for people if they have company could just park on, in the driveway? I mean, isn't that something that you should be thinking about?
Yeah, so a garage style parking, if you're gonna park in a driveway, you need a minimum of 20 feet in depth. And so that's an extra 20+ feet you would need out of the site to provide a true parking stall in front of.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be to the advantage of the people living there or wanting to buy it?
Potentially. I mean, I guess it's not a code requirement to have driveway parking.
No, I understand that, but it seems like it's kind of some way it should be able to happen. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of parking around there.
So I just want to add that none of this we're doing here is for any action we're
I
going
know.
to do here, so you guys can all fill out the development review forms. Everybody here can fill them out. We either have them over here, or we can go online and also do them. So
Yeah,
as you
this
ask the
seems crazy.
questions, you can fill out those comment forms. So any other questions?
Yeah,
Going back, stormwater very briefly, is it typical that you're trying to, city tries to talk you out of doing any detention and treatment?
No, they don't try to talk us out of that. In fact, there are code requirements for that. Usually over an acre is the trigger where you have to, in this style of drainage basin that flows to the Truckee River, we typically mitigate for increase in flow rate. So that's to make sure that the runoff you cause, the increased runoff you cause by development doesn't increase flow rate downstream. Now that gets confused a lot with the North Valley in the closed basin. That's retention where you're trying to keep the lake level. Here you're just concerned with flow rates. The difference in impervious area between this and the pre-developed condition on a lot of this size is relatively insignificant. So the LID will provide both. It'll help reduce that runoff.
If you also, from what you presented here, it looks like you're reducing canopy overall. From what's pre-existing. So my question is, you said your green space is, or landscape space is 26%. It's hard to see how you would achieve that between the building footprints and the paved area. So are you talking about putting in tiny lawn space in front of each of these and not trees?
Yeah, but maybe we could go back
Yeah, because it looks like you're gonna eliminate like 15 trees or so from that lot.
Trees are gone.
Yeah, the demolition permit's been pulled, the site's cleared, so it's a blank slate today. I mean, if you're talking full canopy, I guess you could try and forecast, you know, when these trees get mature, that kind of. So you can see where they're designating areas of, these crosshatch areas are the limited common elements, so that'll be, you know, your typical yard. There's evergreen screening trees along the perimeter. And then the pockets of landscape get, you know, formal common area trees. And then each homeowner will have the ability to do, whether it's potted plants or additional plantings, in the limit.
So when you design something like this, do you basically tend to favor grass in very small areas that maybe are not so efficient?
No, the problem with grass, especially in small areas, is that you end up watering the hardscape really more than, you know, between our wind and just the dynamics of trying to irrigate a small space. So typically in this kind of common area setting, you're gonna see a xeriscape type where you're looking at trees and shrubs with a, you know, a ground cover of trees. But you don't have to spray irrigate this.
We're gonna go back and settle with the sample of questions.
One more left. I saw that there was an application for sewer credits. Can you speak to that?
I'm pretty sure that that's associated with the demolition. permit.
Yeah.
So when you have a project that's connected at single family or existing residential buildings connected to the city sewer, when you demolish those, you get a credit at the city for a connection fee, because typically when you come in for development, you pay a connection fee per unit. So they'll have a bank credit associated with this property. And
We'll pay for like 11 connections.
most likely, yeah, I have not
Yeah,
seen the calc from the city, how many, what they actually credited them. So I can't tell you exactly how much credit they have, but that's
the gist of it. All right, thank you.
No, I seen the lady behind you. Has been
I'll make a look for it.
You spoke to my question about parking, especially when somebody's gonna have a Christmas party or they want.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
There's no parking.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's a mix of 1 and 2s.
And two bedroom.
Yeah. If we count them. So you're gonna have.
This may be more of a planning question, but, and it might be useful at some point to have someone from planning commission explain things like this density thing, like it's supposed to be 14 units per acre, but you can really put more. That has to do with like how many square feet, I guess you can put in for, I'm just really concerned with how dense like Midtown is becoming with putting in developments like this and all of these things were all allowed, you know, at some point by someone, but it's really affecting the neighborhood and these massive, you know, 25, 30 foot, once you include the roof pitch, things being put in. It's really changing the character of the neighborhood. And it would be helpful to understand like why they decided this, why they're allowing this. And then the tree thing too. I thought that there was an initiative to like not lose canopy, to not lose trees.
Yeah, the
And-
ordinance didn't go.
Oh, okay, so so the developers can just cut down whatever they want. Oh, lovely.
We do have a member of our planning staff on the Zoom, Leah Brock. Did you want to add something, Leah? Maybe not.
Okay, you had a question back here. What do you think?
Well, and that's what I guess is my ignorance, is this said and done at 17 units, or they're proposing it could go to 14, is there, that would address extra space for a tree canopy and parking?
So this is a tentative map application. It has to go to planning commission. as presented is 17 units as requested. You get approval on that, you can't build any more than 17 units. You could, since this density at this size of unit counts out to 19, technically you could come back, reopen the public hearing and ask for 19 if you want. You can build less. So once you get a 10 map approval, we call it entitlement. That'll then move into the final map process, which is where the actual plat is, which creates all the lots. That simultaneously goes through the building permit process. They can decide they want to do larger units and only map 10. 17 is the max with an approval for 10. Yeah, and so for those who are curious, it's Reno Municipal Code 18.04.905 B, density bonuses in multifamily districts. Density increases are allowed for projects with small unit sizes in multifamily districts as followed. So you get 15% when your average unit size is less than 1,800 square feet. You get 30% when you're less than 1,400, you get 45% when you're less than 1,000.
Is, was one house saved on that property? Was kind of gutted and saved? There is one property, yeah, one structure.
Still there?
I thought so.
I walked by it today, it's.
Yeah.
Looks like there was one that was.
Yeah.
And it's just or someone disassembled it or. Oh.
So remember, you can fill out those review forms online. Anybody else have any?
This is more of a comment than a question that, I'm sure you guys will be familiar with that point. That less of 1 acre, 0.99% of an acre. It's a very narrow, piece of land. And it will be challenging to accommodate all the, vehicles that will be going in and out of that, property onto Plumas. And I would also like to add that most of the properties in that area are residential. There are a couple of properties on Cola, which are duplexes, but by and large, that's a residential area.
And this is a residential unit. These are single family for sale units. I can't speak to the history of the recent Reimagine Reno and why this has now been zoned multifamily. Exactly why they chose MF 14 here, other than you have surrounding commercial type uses, and typically you want to take in a planning world, you'd like to take your commercial a little higher density as you transition into a formal, single family detached where you have just a single house. So in planning world, and the way that the zoning is set up, this is kind of the ideal stepping stone from commercial into single family.
There were, I think you said 9, like potentially 9 units in that, on that property. Those were all very small houses, and going from 9 to 17 on the same amount of land with almost no trees is not a good use of that space.
So we're gonna move on, so thank you.
Yeah.
For your time, you guys.
If you're
Okay.
This is, yes, I'm kind of torn. I like the idea of, infilling,
Yeah.
Reno, but I also, I live just down the street from this, and it's gonna increase traffic. It's a ton more cars. And if you keep it, I see this happening more and more around town. And it's just gonna clog up our streets. Is the city thinking about, how do we transition away from cars? We have to get away from cars. Our lifestyle is gonna suck, because we're just gonna be sitting in traffic all the time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably in a planning sense, a pretty good use of the property, to be honest with you, to go that much. Now, I was reviewing it under staff or engineering, I would probably make them bring a median down from Plymouth Street, and I'm not the traffic engineer, but I would prevent those left-hand turns, you know, sorry, guys, you're right, and then you're going around, that's what I would do. That's what City of Reno engineering should do if they're responsible, because they have that, I think, discretion. Yeah, because, you know, who wants that conflict? And you also, you know, you got the other people making that, you know, coming out of the R4 or whatever street that is. But, you know, so, I mean, this community needs to get their head away from, you know, the traffic environment needs to be safe, number one, for all users. It doesn't need to be, you know, efficient to go everywhere you want to go as fast as you go. And when you have that mindset, you're really suffering, particularly the older neighborhoods. I mean, Plymouth is not widened because of like Arlington Avenue was, because a whole bunch of people fought widening Plymouth at one time. And if Plymouth had been widened, this whole neighborhood would have suffered because they'd have a 4-lane road there. So widening is not the answer, particularly in urban core. And, you know, and that's part of the big suffering of downtown, and we're still in that mindset. You know, you can't have a downtown that's purpose is to move cars as fast as possible to the freeway and have a downtown that's successful. It's just not gonna happen. So, you know, we really need to focus on slowing traffic down, making it safe for all users. And, you know, sorry, you live in the little part of town like this, driving is not fun.
So we have one more.
We do have a comment from Zoom. Donna, you should be able to unmute. You'll have 3 minutes. Can you hear us, Donna? Okay, Donna, there's going to be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting.
Donna Keats.
It is Donna.
Tell her she can type it into the chat maybe, because
It looks like she's unmuted. Can you hear us, Donna?
we've had problems with everyone today.
The phone's working now. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to just call her. She
Oh.
texted me, asking me to make sure she could give her comment.
Yeah. She might not be able to hear us.
Hi, you've reached,
Okay.
That's not,
Give her a few more minutes when we get down to public comment.
there'll be another opportunity, Donna. I'll come back to you, okay?
All right, well, thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
We're gonna move on to item C, board, commission, committee member reports and announcements. This is the only one we can talk. No comments? All right.
Well, I wasn't here, and I don't know if this got covered, but what's happening with the new district?
Oh, I did mention that. Yeah. Tomorrow, council's gonna discuss, or Wednesday, excuse me, the process to draw the new lines. But the SB 12, that would reverse having 6-1 that way, that document.
Oh, I know that guy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, they kind of want to do it the same. Staff is proposing we do it the same way. That we drew these lines, where staff hires a consultant who draws the lines.
okay, I'll be there on
Not
Wednesday.
an independent redistricting commission where people who are running for office are arm's length from figuring out how to draw lines for themselves.
Okay, so there were no announcements, so we're gonna move
Yeah.
on to item D, future agenda items.
I'd like to basically put on the agenda in some fashion or other. As you know, there is a Parks Recreation Open Space Planning Project
Yeah.
that's underway, that's been drafted. The document as it currently exists has some serious shortcomings, and the director is, I think, discussing some of those with council members. But there are many aspects of park recreation open space that directly affect Ward 1.
Yeah.
Ward 1 has a lot of issues embedded within that whole subject. I think it would be nice to have some sort of a discussion on some of those, because one of the issues with the current plan, proposed draft plan, was the problems with input. There was a very skewed input into that kind of public input I'm talking about now. So it would seem to be desirable that each of the NABs talk maybe a lot about some of those issues and the needs within their individual Ward 1, and whether or not the planning process and the Parks and Recreation budget as it exists and might be proposed really is reflecting some of those needs.
Okay, we'll see where they're at of that. I mean, I would hope that it goes to all the NABs.
I think that was the plan, as I recall, from Parks and Rec,
Good as much.
meeting, as they were talking about, trying to get input from all the
Okay.
NABs.
Okay.
Anybody else have any agenda items?
Well, I would just be interested, if it were possible at some point, to get some information from planning. I mean, we hear all about all these plans, but we never hear from anyone from the planning commission or committee, if there was any way to find out, like, kind of what their thoughts are about how to balance these needs of people complaining about what's happening in their development in their communities versus what they see the need, why they set these densities and so forth. It would just be nice to know what their thinking is.
That would be nice to have a little briefer on.
Tutorial or whatever.
Yeah, on the master plan.
Any other items? I have one to add, and this has to do, this may or may not be an agenda item having to do with 2020 and the pandemic here. You might need to find a new chairman at the next meeting if I term out in July.
We will find out about that. Okay.
So that may or may not be.
Who's vice chair right now?
I'll go back and look at the minutes and see who it is.
Yeah, when Mike agreed to do it, I agreed to vice chair. But I might.
Same vote.
I mean,
So this could.
I really wish this wasn't happening because we're about to draw the boundaries, and I don't want to bring on new people. But if we lose enough, we have to bring on new people. But I don't want to bring new people on and then they get on the NAB and then they're in a different ward. So that is,
And you have two open
We have-
vacancies, right?
yeah,
Three.
yeah. And I was,
Yeah, wait.
yeah.
But
Okay.
Parks and Rec Commission is 2 3-year terms. They have their 2.
Yeah, I thought the NAB, they changed that, must have changed that. I thought they were longer.
Okay, so you'll let us know that's an agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll check with the city attorneys and I'll share if
Yeah.
it gets an update.
Do we term out in July? Sorry, July would be our last.
July would be your last meeting. July 31st would be the end of your term.
So we could.
I think we're all in that.
Many of you are in that term, but
Well,
most of you, everyone except member Tyson and the chair have the option to be reappointed, so you still have another term. But member Tyson and the chair have both served 2 terms. So I'm going to check with the attorneys and they could come back and say that they're not eligible to be reappointed. In which case you need to elect a new chair and vice chair at the August NAB meeting.
Really has
Or the July
2020. If 2020 was considered a year that we didn't have meetings, then.
I'll check with them and see.
You let me know.
It's all
They should red shirt here.
I mean, if you look at it that way, because we had no meetings in 2020, for a whole year.
Yeah, I agree. I
So does
just,
it reset or does it
Yeah.
continue through?
you know,
That's really what they have to say.
the bottom line is the attorney can justify whatever conclusion they want to reach. So if they want to keep us on, there's justification because of the 2020 red shirt year. And if they don't, then
And you've caused enough problems. with city council that we-
I'm just saying, I wouldn't take it personally.
well, there's lots of troublemakers out there.
All right, and then the next item is E, public comment.
Oh, next item, did you get to next meeting?
We did future agenda item.
When is our next meeting? I will not be here for our next meeting. We don't need to meet, we Kurt certainly can meet without me.
We might need the meeting though.
Yeah,
I think-
okay. I may not be there, I may not be there, and I may not be at Sue.
Well, technically I could run July and then go.
Yeah,
June,
We could vote that.
usually we do take one summer month off, but August sounds like a better one if we've got people leaving and new people coming on, so. Go ahead, maybe we'll get the,
June 12th. is the
okay,
next
yeah, I
meeting.
may be going,
Well, we could always. we Could vote on the next chair and vice chair.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
July, and then
If
Yeah.
we need.
yeah,
Yeah.
but go ahead and meet in June, maybe the planning people can come.
all right, so public comment.
Donna, you show unmuted on our side. Go ahead and give it a try. Okay, I'm gonna call your cell again.
We have every effort.
Okay,
Hi, Donna, can you hear us okay?
yes.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yeah, you can hear. You're gonna have 3 minutes, okay?
Yep, okay. Oh, the echo.
We'll turn the volume.
If you turn your volume off.
So on these top rows thing.
Not working. Donna, if you turn the volume off on your computer.
Trying to.
Can you mute her?
She's muted. It's the volume on her computer, and I can't mute our end, otherwise no one will be able to hear her.
Well, here, I can do it. Look at the minute. Okay.
That's much better, Donna. Go ahead. Yeah, that works. You'll have 3 minutes. I'm gonna restart the timer. Can you hear me, Donna? Can you, Donna?
Oh, my goodness. Here,
Are you muted on your phone?
okay. Are we there?
Can you hear me, Donna?
Can you hear me?
What were you saying about?
Hello?
Remote meeting?
Donna, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. That was fun.
All right, you'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and start now.
Okay, so on the Plymouth Street building, well, there are a lot of things that I find a little disturbing. One thing is that the cutoff for 30% density bonus is if your average unit size is less than 1,400 square feet. So they did the counts on theirs, they come up with 1,395, which we're seeing in all kinds of developments. Like they come out 2 feet or less than 5 feet smaller for average unit size so that they can overbuild on the lot. My opinion, I think that's kind of slimy. Myself, because it meets all the code, they get a stamp of approval, but it really isn't as it purports to be in terms of the actual development. Secondly, yes, 1,395 square feet, which actually would not give them 30% density bonus, it's 1,400 square feet. Secondly, the traffic study, they have 17 units. They don't have a traffic study, they don't have anything. They said 1 peak hour trip per unit per day. If somebody goes out during peak hours, wouldn't you think they have to come in? Where's the perception they're not gonna come back in at peak hours? I mean, I don't get that at all. That's false advertising also. So it's a little bit, I wanted to ask that gossip stuff, but I couldn't get hooked up, so I apologize about that. Because it's overbuilding on a lot, all for the sake of infill. And there are questions for the staff to these guys in this revised thing that was sent, that staff asked all these questions about setbacks and how this thing met, that thing met, and they're good questions, and the answers are not so good. And so it's just a little disturbing to me, because it's just gonna be a wash through. And they wanted to know that the multi-families are required to have entry points. Some doesn't, the state so short, it doesn't really matter. I just think I'm all in favor of what we're doing in the city in certain parts of town, and we're shooting on in favor of what the city is allowing because they can't. And I guess I just to express that, because I use that road all the time. And trying to take a left on the Plymouth Street already, certain times of the day is barely possible, and I'm not in a hurry trying to rush from point A to point B. I'm just traveling. And between Plymouth and Mount Rose, the backup, sometimes you can't even get across Plymouth from the south, you know, because there's so many cars backed up at the stoplight there. And now we're gonna put another driveway in right across the street from that other driveway to the other multifamily right across Plymouth Street, where that has access to all those homes. And it's like, what, less than 50 feet or 30 feet, 20 feet from the intersection of Mount Rose? I think it's kind of a nightmare, and calling 17 cars a day is ridiculous. 17 units, one trip per unit per day, I kind of just don't think so. And I guess I want to express my dismay, and I'm not going to happen so often, and not surprised, but it happens all the time, and I just think somebody should say no from time to time. Other than Councilmember Brackus, whom I really appreciate, every time somebody wants to make her look bad on council, and she's the only one who's actually representing her city.
Thank you for your comments, Donna. That's your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just add, I always have trouble talking at your meetings. I don't know why that is.
We can connect offline, Donna. I'll make sure to call you tomorrow, okay?
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
bye-bye.
Okay. Any other public comment?
Would anyone else in the room like to give public comment today?
I think it's a bad way it's designed.
All right, we're gonna move on to item F. This one we do get to vote on.
I move we adjourn.
All those for?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I finally got to be late.